Bypassing MAC address filters on an access point. This is another fun one. I'm glad you've joined me. Let's begin. Our objective in this nugget is really simple, is to identify how we can bypass, if we need to, wireless MAC filtering on an access point. So in an earlier nugget, our friend came to us and talked to us about not broadcasting the SSID, and through that nugget, we also identified how simple it is to discover what that SSID is. So it's not very secure just hiding it. Well, he also told us, well, I didn't just hide the SSID, I also did MAC address filtering, he tells us. And I listed all the machines, their wireless network cards, the MAC addresses in the access point, and told the access point deny all access except for this list of MAC addresses. So now that he has two levels or sort of levels of security, what's the problem with that? Well, I first want to point out that taking steps towards security is better than no security at all. Unfortunately, it's also very easy to get around MAC filtering. The three basic steps involved are: number one, find out the MAC address and the channel that the access point is on. Secondly, find out the MAC address that the client is using who's successfully associated with that access point because he is on the good list. For example, his MAC address is a winner. It's on that list of MAC addresses that can be used, and we're just going to borrow it. We're not going to take it forever, but we are going to borrow that MAC address using a tool called MAC Changer. So if the MAC address filtering list on the access point says, MAC address A, B, C, D, E, F are all good, we'll just become one of those MAC addresses and associate with the access point. Now, how do we go about demonstrating this? Well, we're going to log on first. So I'm going to log on as root. Default password is tour. We'll take a look at changing that in another nugget. But for now, we're good. Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up an SSH session. The primary reason for me using SSH is simply get a larger font. So for text-based commands like the ones we're using, I'm only doing it so it's more readable. You can do exactly the same commands right at the command line of the actual backtrack without using SSH. For this demonstration, I've got an access point. It's the one that we used in the previous nugget where we discovered the SSID. As you may recall, it has no encryption whatsoever. And I also included, since the last nugget, I included a MAC address filter so that only specific MAC addresses are allowed. The MAC address of this backtrack system, its wireless card, is not currently on that list. So let's start the party. We're going to use airmon start and reference my wireless network card, which hasn't changed. It's still wireless LAN 0. And look at that. So let's do an ifconfig just to make sure my machine can see it. And it can't. It cannot see that wireless adapter whatsoever. To fix that, let's go ahead and do an ifconfig WLAN 0 up. And that device is not showing up. Wow. All right. So the reality is, because it's not showing up, it's going to be tough to use. Now, when we set this up in one of our earlier nuggets, this backtrack system is in a virtual machine. So at this point, what I would do, what I'm going to do, is I'm going to check my VirtualBox settings just to make sure that that wireless network adapter is still allocated and associated with this virtual machine. So to do this, let me bring open the VirtualBox Manager. This is the machine we're working with right here. I'm going to click on Settings, and we'll go down to USB. It's still loading in, and sure enough, it's there. Okay, so that is the actual adapter. It is not showing up as a valid interface. So here, let's do this. I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to disconnect from the USB port this alpha adapter. I heard a little noise. That's great. And I'm going to plug it back in. And I also want to verify and see if that magically had it come back. That would be awesome if it did. I'm not expecting it. This may require a reboot to get that going. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to simply reboot backtrack. So let me go ahead and close my SSH session, get that out of the way. Bring up backtrack native, and we'll simply do a power off now. I could have also done a reboot, I suppose, at the same time, but I'm going to just power it down. The USB is connected, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it back up with the hope that that USB device shows up. One of the thoughts that went through my head was, I'm just going to edit all this out, not share with them anything. But the reality is, stuff does happen. A device may not show up, especially in a virtual environment. So I'm just going through the same troubleshooting steps that I would if no one was watching. So I'm glad you're here. Let's reboot that and see if that wireless adapter shows up. So here's my VirtualBox Manager. That's our machine in question. We'll boot it up, and hopefully that interface will be available. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty tough to listen on the network for other devices and other access points if we don't have a wireless interface ourselves. All right, so right here we'll do a root, and once it says we're honky-dory, we'll do an ifconfig just to verify we have our wireless LAN interface showing up. And there it is. Magical. Now I did two things. I actually unplugged the wireless adapter, plugged it back in. The running backtrack in the virtual machine didn't see it. I then just rebooted it. I did nothing else, and there's our wireless adapter. So now we can start using it. All right, my friend, thanks for joining me on that detour. It was fun. Now that we have the wireless adapter that Backtrack has to use, let's go ahead and turn on monitoring mode. So we're going to do an airmon-ng start for wireless LAN 0. That looks a lot better. And you notice right here, we now have this logical mon 0 that we can use to listen to the airwaves. And now if this adapter, by the way, is in the 2.4 gigahertz range. So if there's 5 gigahertz signals I'm looking for, I would need to have a wireless network card that Backtrack can use that could listen on that frequency range. So let's see who's out there chatting. So we're going to use AeroDump and tell it to use mon 0. And it's going through the channel. So up in the upper left-hand corner, it's cycling through the channels, listening. We have the MAC addresses under the BSSID on the top left. And then we have the ESSID, the name, if you will, the SSID name on the right. So we still have this guy. I'm going to pause the screen just for a minute so I can draw on it. So right there, that's our hidden SSID. That's the MAC address. That's the one with no encryption whatsoever at the moment. And that's the one we want to get. So we're going to keep track of this one. This is also, by the way, the access point that currently has the MAC address filtering list that this Backtrack machine is not on. So let me unpause that. And again, we shouldn't have to do too much of anything to discover that missing or hidden SSID. In fact, if we just wait for a client or two to go ahead and associate, that will pop up. And there it goes. So now we have this SSID that we knew from earlier. We also have the MAC address. Let's also take a look at the channel. Currently it is on channel 4, which is a little bit different. In our previous nugget, that guy I thought was on channel 1. In any event, he's on channel 4 now. And now all we need to do is find a client who is currently associated with that access point and then borrow that MAC address and we'll be in. One thing I like about watching like the food channel or a cooking show is the before and after. So what I'd like to do is before we actually join and associate this SSID as a client, let's go ahead first of all and verify that we can't. And then we can take a look at the difference after we borrow a MAC address. So how do we actually tell Backtrack that we want to associate with a specific access point? The answer is simple. We simply say with iwconfig, I want my wireless LAN 0 interface to associate with sneaky-SSID, and it's on channel 4. And it's done. So, well, I shouldn't say it's done because we've told Backtrack that we want to associate with that access point. But the access point has a filtering list that says, oh, sorry, your MAC address isn't on my list. So we're not going to have positive results here. To verify those not so positive results, we can use iwconfig with that interface referenced. And right here it says, you know what? You're not associated. It didn't happen. The access point isn't letting you, Mr. Backtrack, associate because your MAC address is not on the list of approved MAC addresses due to the MAC filtering. Now, all we need really to get into this access point and to start using it would be a MAC address of somebody who is on the list. And we can get one by simply asking AeroDump to help us with that. Now, as far as the help is concerned with commands like this, do you remember several of the options that we talked about? We have man pages. We can type in man space aerodump-ng, and that would give us all the documentation regarding all of the commands. We also have help that we can use. So we could type in --help or -h. It varies based on the command. But it's very important to get context-sensitive help where you need it with a command. So before we press enter, let's take a look at this one. The -c says what channel do we want to listen on. In this case, it's channel number 4. Why is that? And that's because, I scrolled off the screen, that's because it's channel 4 that the access point that we're interested in, that's where he's currently sitting. And the BSSID is the MAC address of the access point from up in this column up here. And the -a says, you know what, I want to filter and only show the output of clients who are currently associated with that access point. Isn't that great? We don't have to wade through a lot of output. We can say, just show me the clients who are associated. And check this out. Those clients were very likely going to be on the permit list on the MAC address filter. And then we're telling it we want to use this interface right there to go ahead and do the work. So that's what we're doing with AeroDump right here. So let's press enter. So it does its magic, and we don't have any clients yet at the moment. And oh, there we go. There's one. Didn't take long. And I didn't have to touch the computer for that. That's just back and forth traffic that it's doing. So what this shows us right here is that, I'm going to pause the screen just for a moment. So there's channel 4 like we told it to. And here's the MAC address of our access point. And there it is again. And we have this station right here that it looks like he's talking with him. That's fantastic. Wonderful. All we need to do is tell Backtrack that we want to use this MAC address. Now, Keith, won't it cause a problem if you got 2 MAC addresses on the same network? Yeah, it very well might. The answer is, if this is a situation where we want to get access in, we may not care too much about causing an individual machine too much grief. Again, all of this is done in a practice network as demonstration only, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the MAC address right there that we are going to borrow and tell Backtrack to start using with its wireless network interface card. So without further ado, let's use MacChanger. This is built in as one of the hundreds of tools built into the Backtrack distribution. So there's our context sensitive help for MacChanger. It looks like what we want to do is we want to go ahead and set the MAC address so that we are going to use the MAC address that's currently on the OK list from the access points perspective. So with a little copy paste, maybe a little notepad or whatever text editor is your favorite one, we'll go ahead and put that in. And it says, error, Will Robinson. Can't change that MAC address. The interface is device or resource busy. Okay, so what is it busy doing? Well, we do have it in monitor mode so that we can sniff the airways. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and tell Airmon to stop that process. And then we'll try the MacChanger again. It's very likely that's what's holding us up at this point. And if that doesn't fix it, we'll try something else. So Airmon-NG stop for wireless LAN 0. Oh, that's good. That's a very good indicator. So monitoring was on. We had Mon 0, our logical interface. Now we've turned it off. Let's try that same exact command again. So a couple up arrow keys, MacChanger-M, press enter. It says, great, you're set. It was an alpha card, and now I don't know what this is. I do. It came off of a Mac. So I have a little Macintosh machine back here. It could have been any computer, though, that was associated. So that's the MAC address that we are now using. Let's go ahead and let's bounce the interface. That's always a fun thing. I'm going to just shut down wireless LAN 0, bring it up. It should come up and say, okay, great, I've got this MAC address. And then we'll try to associate with this beautiful access point once again using the borrowed MAC address. So let's bounce the interface with ifconfig wireless LAN 0 down. Give it just a second. And then we'll bring it right back up. No vacation time for him. ifconfig WLAN 0 up. And let's see if that is going to make it work for us. All right, so now that we're using that MAC address that's on the AOK list with the access point, let's see if we can associate with that access point. So we're going to use the iwconfig command for the right interface, specify the SSID that's hidden. It doesn't matter. We know what it is, and specify the channel that we want to use. How do we verify that worked? Let's scroll up and take a look at what it looked like previously when we weren't associated with the access point, when it didn't work for us. So if we scroll up right here, it said access point not associated. So if we use the iwconfig wireless LAN 0 command now, so we are now associated with that access point, and we've got access into the network. And that, my friend, is how simple it is to bypass MAC address filtering. In this nugget, we've had the opportunity to see just how simple it is to bypass a MAC filter list that's sitting on an access point. All the commands that I used in this nugget, by the way, are available in the Nugget Lab download area. So if you want to practice with this, all you really need is you need an access point that has MAC address filtering capability, which is virtually all of them, and then go ahead and simply walk through the steps that we did together in this video. I appreciate you joining me. It's been a hoot. I've had a lot of fun. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.